Welcome back to Oppidan Talks, your weekly dose of inspiring characters from all walks of life.
A household name and founder of a brand loved around the world, our guest today is Emma Bridgewater. Once upon a time, Emma was in a china shop and couldn't find the right gift for her mother. In 1985, the eponymous brand launched in Stoke-on-Trent, and Emma Bridgewater was born. Entrepreneur, writer, businesswoman, and fresh from a visit from the Chancellor himself, we're incredibly excited to have Emma with us today. Emma, thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's a thrill.
I want to go straight back and ask, what were your school reports like?
They were an absolutely constant thread of, the message was always the same, could do better. I don't think I ever sort of kind of reached my potential in school. I remember feeling very lost and kind of directionless a lot of the time.
Was it obvious from day dot that you weren't going to have a job behind a desk?
I think most of my teachers would have said so, yes. No, I mean, having said, I spend quite a lot of time at a computer or frantically grappling with my phone. I feel I do a lot of desk work, but not in a very orderly way.
And can I ask, as you're aware, we're a mentoring company. We're big on the role of mentoring for kids. Did you have a mentor growing up? Have there been mentors in your life, personally and in business?
Oddly, I hadn't really thought about this, but yes, I'm not quite sure why. Possibly because when my parents parted, my mum married a much younger man. He was 11 years younger than her, and he was an undergraduate when he was first around. And so his friends, he and his friends were they were sort of halfway in age between me, my friends, and my mum and her friends. And so there always were a lot of interesting people around. And I think I do remember kind of picking up quite early on in my life on the idea of sort of not interviewing people, but sort of being curious about how their lives worked. Because I definitely made life plans, even though I was sort of formulating life plans quite early on, even though I didn't know kind of what I was going to be doing, but I had an idea of how I wanted to live and the kind of, I was growing up in the 70s, and it was a very, feminism was a huge issue. I think a lot of that was probably the thing I got from Rick's contemporaries. And so I went through school very sure that I had huge opportunities and that I was definitely the equal of any men I came across. And I had sort of big plans for being successful. That's odd, isn't it? I think I did.
Was that unique amongst your kind of contemporaries? Do you think that attitude to work?
I think, well, if I think my contemporaries at school, a lot of them were much more focused on a academic or a medical career. It was that kind of school in Oxford where they were educating us to be very thorough and to do kind of serious work, whereas I could tell it was something more there was something sketchier in my head, which I didn't yet sort of know during school was an entrepreneurial career.
Can I ask, for those who don't know the story of your business so well, perhaps you can take us back to the early days. How did it get going? The idea, what was that first bit of setting the business up like?
Okay, while I was at university in London, I was living in Brixton in my third year with a boyfriend quite a bit older than me. I watched his freelance career as a photographer and thought, God, this is stressful. And and tallied that with my stepfather's very successful but stressful freelance career as a television director, and thought, I don't think this is going to work. I think my father's solution of a business that has momentum would suit me better. It was odd. I was quite sort of calculating even at university. And so I wanted to start a business, but the first thing I did after, a few weeks after finals, was to go and work for two girls who design knitwear. Small, successful, vibrant, funny company, and I absolutely loved working with them. And I asked lots of nosy questions and did almost every job. Definitely every job available. Left there a bit over a year after joining them, having saved 300 quid, and I thought understood how their business worked and quite a bit about how my dad's business worked, felt fully equipped to start a business myself. There is a lot to be said for the total piggy ignorance of youth. Because I mean, knowing what I know now, that seems crazy. And I remember various serious grown-ups kind of taking terrible shocked breaths when they saw what I was doing and saying, I think maybe you ought to get a job. Because I did get myself quite heavily into debt quite quickly. But the business idea didn't come along immediately. I left the knitwear company, age 23, thinking, right, now I've got to find an idea for a business. And so I was very open to that idea. I was keeping body and soul together, running a chaotic sort of catering thing with one of my cousins. And thank God we didn't poison anyone, but we had some fun and sort of just about kept afloat. And whilst I was doing that, I was shopping for a present for my mum. And at that stage in my life, I was in London, I was running around. I was probably going home less than I ever had. And I absolutely adored, but both my parents. But I was particularly focused on my mum. It was her birthday coming up. And the sort of feeling that I hadn't seen her enough. And I really wanted something that kind of conveyed the love that I wanted to, I really wanted her to get. And I stood in a china shop thinking, oh yes, 2 cups and saucers, that's great, because that says we're going to have a cozy time together soon. Chit-chatting at the kitchen table. And I looked around the china shop and it wasn't there. They didn't have stuff in the kitchen. And it really was quite hallucinatory. And obviously it's probably got hugely enhanced in the telling, but in the telling and retelling of it, but this is what happened. I stood in a china shop and thought, there should be a dresser that looks like her kitchen, full of lovely, colourful, slightly mismatched stuff. Where is it? Ooh, I could make that. And I'd never made a pot in my life. I didn't know what I was talking about, but I had this really trippy conviction that that's what I was going to do. And a few days later, I was talking to a grown-up friend. There were lots of graphic designers about in the 80s in London. He was one of them, very successful. And he said, oh, yeah, that's a really nice idea for pottery, colourful pottery. I've just been in Stoke-on-Trent. And he literally patched his pockets, came up with the business bloke he'd been working with. He said, shambolic, whatever, but, really interesting guy, really good craftsman. Write his number down. And I made to take the card. And Terry said, no, I want his card. Write it on your fag packet. And I did. And Terry was he was a really good mentor to me. He said, and actually, it's a really good idea. You will call him tomorrow, won't you? And I said, well, and he said, well, draw your idea. Come on, you can draw the shapes. Mug. What are you going to do? And when you've called him, when you've been to see him, come and tell me about it. So I was sort of locked in. I'd walked out onto the diving board, and I kind of had to keep going then. And so I did get some drawings together, and I did ring this guy in Stoke, and I did make a date to go and see him. And I got on the train in Euston. Literally a few days after that meeting at a party, and stepped into an extraordinary world that has kind of held me totally prisoner ever since.
Were those polka dots on those first drawings? What were those first designs?
The first designs, I was playing with stippling with a natural sponge. I hadn't yet worked out that I could cut out a million different motifs using a sort of furnishing foam rubber sort of thing, foam sponge. So I'm not describing it very well there. Anyway, it's a sort of artificial sponge. At the time I was trying to find natural sponges and trying to work out how on earth, because spongeware was a thing. The same house in Brixton that I had lived in with Alex, he and his brother collected spongeware. They did a lot of mudlarking, and there were marvelous shards of pottery all over the windowsills and every surface. And his brother gave me a very good lecture on spongeware. And I sort of tried to find out about it, but it's not curated much because it's the everyday stuff that's beneath the radar of a curator. So I'd sort of stumbled on a technique. It's a bit like potato printing. You print the design on. But it didn't exist anymore. So I had to revive the technique. I had to work out how to do that sponge printing on pottery. And so I I sort of did the thing. My dad had been insistent, and I'm grateful for it, that I should do an academic subject. So I'd read English literature at London University, but I had been yearning to go to art school. And it sort of came out then as an art school project. And it was really fun, me and my soldering iron. But the first, bit sort of burning the rubber away, I'm sure probably definitely condemning myself to an early death. Because these days there's an awful lot of extraction goes on to make it safe. But I think I drew and managed to cut out using sort of nail scissors and tweezers, a bow and, a diamond and a little, they were really simple things like old spongeware. But I kind of got the hang of it, that I could see this perfectly suited my rather limited draftsman skills. And I could work away at a running dog or a nice little daisy, or they were very shell, simple things, sort of starting with old spongeware from the 19th and early 20th century as my inspiration. But increasingly I saw that it was a really nice freestyle thing that I could do what I wanted with.
Can I ask, with the benefit of hindsight all these years later, is it easy to explain why the business has been a success? What are the key factors that are...
Okay, there's, in any success, there's always luck. It was the right moment. It was true there was a gap in the market. What I didn't realize was that the potteries were all collapsing, and they were making what you can see now is a huge mistake of chasing lower prices and abandoning what had perhaps become quite a recalcitrant unionized workforce in search of kind of cooperative, i.e. sort of rather unregulated making all over the world. They went sort of first to Portugal, caused a bit of chaos there, and then on further east, it seemed to me. Whereas I was very, I think, so there was a gap. Domestic China was changing, and nobody had spotted that we all live in our kitchens, and you like to have your everyday stuff out. And anyway, it's going to go in and out of the washing up machine and onto the table several times in the day. It just sort of, and the idea, what else was compelling about it? I think I chucked out the idea, I think it was strong that I chucked out the idea of matching in favor of stuff that looked nice together and that you could mix up with old things. That caught people's imagination. And I think I was the right face and voice for it. I didn't know what I was doing, but my instincts were quite helpful. I took nice photographs I had a friend take nice photographs. I wrote a sort of pithy little piece about it. I sent that out to shops, rang them up and pestered them, and they almost all ordered. And each of them I used as a mentor. What works, show me all the things that sell in your shop, and I made friends with them. And then one of them, the General Trading Company, which used to be a sort of really important, really lovely shop for homewares on Sloane Square, the China buyer there said, right, okay, look, come, I'm just going to sit you down and tell you a little bit about how the world works. You need to go to a trade fair. You can't do all this running around yourself. And you need to make the collections more coherent, and you don't need to change them quite as quickly, because I've taken a sort of fashion approach.
Can I ask a super simple question? Has it been fun?
I'll try and give a super simple answer.
No, just I'm.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's been fantastically hard work, much harder work than I sort of reckoned. That I was prepared for, even though I had known I'd sort of understood that I'm quite, well, my sisters and I describe each other as overspecified, far too much kind of energy. So it was good, it was exciting to have something big and hard to do. But someone tipped me off early on, business gets ugly. Once you start making money, things go wrong, or, partnerships come under pressure, and all that stuff's awful, really, really so difficult, and so kind of sad a lot of the time. I look back at, you know, the partnerships that have been and gone within my business, and that's quite hard.
For any,
But
for any burgeoning entrepreneurs out there, you say, you know, business does get ugly. What do you think the hardest part of business is? Is it the recruitment? Is it the responsibility? Is it this, you know, what is it?
Okay, Henry, you asked, was it fun? To be honest, the most fun was the very beginning, probably. Or when I took on one lovely girl, Antonia Williams, and I, the year or so that it was just us was probably, for me, the most carefree, even though it was probably the most crazy hard work. And now that it's starting to run in a much more professional way, and it's much clearer what I do and don't do in the business, I'm enjoying it all over again, which is a surprise and really nice. We're sort of in a different phase, taking on an investor, and I'm quite loving that. Bits of it are fun throughout. But as an entrepreneur, it's quite hard. You have a mindset that there's always looking over the horizon. You're always castigating yourself for the things you haven't done. It's very hard to sit down and say, whoa, look at this. You just don't. You push yourself all the time. And that's quite fun. I mean, I suspect that our recovery over the next decades is going to be hugely in the hands of entrepreneurs, and the ability to spot what people need, what they want, what's missing. You know, there's a million versions of that search that I described. So, you know, looking for an idea for a business, and there's a million solutions to that search, and there always will be. And I don't understand people who sit around and say, I can't get a job, because it seems to me that running your own company. Sorry about that. It's a very nice vicar I want to talk to, but not.
You mentioned, Emma, lockdown. I hope you don't mind me asking. You've just been paid a visit by Rishi. Is he as dishy as they say?
Okay, and here's the thing. I've got such a good team that I wasn't there because I was pre-booked on a rather complex. I was shooting something for an arts documentary, and it involved opening a museum and having a lot of people there. So I couldn't possibly host Rishi myself. And that's, for me, what I'm trying to do now is set the business up so that it doesn't need me. I'm trying to define very clearly what I do, so that that's the creative director role, which is mine, is well understood, the value of it in the business, and it will be possible to replace me. And my husband, my ex-husband, Matthew Rice, who's a fantastic designer, is still working for us at the moment, but we have to prove in the studio that we can do without him, because otherwise those 350 people who work for him at Bridgewater will be out of a job when we get run over by a bus or get, you know, dragged off into other projects or whatever it is that happens next. So I felt proud that the team didn't have any difficulty in dealing with that, or indeed almost anything else, without me. They're absolutely fantastic. They're much more efficient than me. And the guy who runs Ops is ex-RAF. He's totally at home with all that. Special branch and they're like this. He's loved sorry, I was going to say he's really loved the social distancing long before those two words were put together. Graham had got A team, B team, C team. You know, everyone. Suddenly the canteen had become several messes, and there were lots of different exits and entrances. He fully understood. It's great having somebody who's really up for a situation.
I think we've got time for one more proper question, and then we're going to hit you with a mini quickfire round of short answers. But to end on the longer ones, I'd just say, what left is there that you'd love to achieve?
Two things. One, I'd like there to be, I'd like a hand thrown project of some kind in Stoke. I think that there's a big missing gap where teaching pottery should be. The vision of, I've only recently learnt to throw. I mean, I haven't learned, I am learning. And it's thrilling, and many more. Everyone should get the chance, and increasingly you don't at school, and you don't. There are very few art schools offering ceramics. So throwing in Stoke, and I really want to write a decent novel. That's what I'd love to do. So I mean, something completely different.
On nature, I mean, I'm going to go off script here, but I know you're president of the campaign to protect rural England.
Yep.
A book set in the wild, sort of. Is that
I don't know. And I definitely want. Sorry, you say, Henry.
No, I was going to say we'll try and plan you one.
I have written 2 books, so basically about work, and my husband, who is very energetic, would say, "Oh, shall I map it out for you? Shall I write the first chapter?" I actually had to leave home to write it because I am very bad at starting. I often, I'll prevaricate and procrastinate for ages.
Well, we'll await the memoir as well. Emma, we're going to come on to the quick fun round now. We're going to take it in turns, and I'm going to start. So, if you could go back to any age, which age would you choose?
I'd really like to misinterpret your question and say I'd like to go back to about 1590 and meet William Shakespeare. I long to know. I mean, I know in my heart, I want to prove that he was he and it wasn't the Earl of Oxford or some such nonsense.
A much more interesting
I really
answer.
want to meet him. Sorry.
A much more interesting answer. Most treasured possession.
I'm kind of in a life full of stuff. I'm quite keen to start divesting, but there's one thing I definitely would hang on to, which is this Ethiopian cross that my mum gave to one of my sisters, and I've worn it for a long time. People say, what is that cross? It seems to make people come and talk to you, and I really like that.
Do you have a bugbear? What's your biggest bugbear?
I think not really, but I do get cross when people take no for an answer, working for me. I think, or when my kids come back going, "Oh no, I couldn't get it to happen." What? I think it's really, really important to learn the skill. If you've got a project that you've got to find a way, don't take no for an answer.
And on that note, the final question we've got, the best piece of advice you can give.
I think it's a piece of advice that was handed to me, which is don't spend too long on research and all your options and kind of asking too many questions about it. At a certain point, jump, because it's not the decision, it's the follow through that matters. When you've made your decision, go forward. And it's hard, sometimes really hard to do that, but it's always the best advice in business and in the rest of life, I think.
Beautifully explained. Thank you. And now from the sublime to the ridiculous, we have a game which we're very proud of called Biscuits. It's a bit like the After Eight game. You have to get a biscuit from your forehead to your mouth without using your hands, preferably making as much noise as possible.
So looking forward to this.
You've got about 30 seconds, and I'll grab the, we'll grab the leaderboard. We've had everyone from Sebastian Folkes to Gianfranco Zola to Sharmadine Reed and all sorts of interesting business people. And the fastest time we've had was 5.5 seconds from a man.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
You've got the hobnob, but no beard. So we'll see whether you can match up.
Well, absolutely no beard. And what about the glasses?
Might be worth taking the glasses off.
I think it might, but then you are just a blur.
This is the sort of top gear.
But hang on, so from here.
But remember, Emma, you can have as many goes as you like in 30 seconds.
Virtual humiliation, you. Oh, sorry.
The big mistake is to think that you have to stop after one go. We'll show you the leaderboard once we've got your time, and see
listen. If you've got half an hour, I'm happy to have a go.
And do remember, you can always break the hobnob in half if you like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely do that. Okay.
Bending the rules is encouraged. All right.
I mean, I have to say, I'm not that person. When I hear people talking about what after dinner game to play, I'll go and do the washing up or, smoking outside. I've never played the other game that you, I'm a rookie.
I thought you'd be right in there for after dinner games.
It's odd that, isn't it? No, my children are so competitive that I've butted out completely.
Well, we've got children around the country competing against you while they watch. So
They're going to win,
yeah.
okay? But
What
be
they'll
kind
do-
because
Yeah.
I'm a beginner. Okay,
Setting
what do
off
I do?
in 3, 2, 1, go for it.
Well, what do I do?
I thought it went in.
Oh, stop it with my tongue. It's disgusting.
Incredibly tasty.
It wasn't at all. Okay, I may have to give up.
You've done very well. You've given it a valiant attempt. You're going on the board with a
My
very
eyes.
small, but kindly given cross.
I'm afraid you go alongside Tim Henman and Sahar Hashemi as not having a time.
It's a total failure.
Not a total
You're
failure.
in good company.
What they'll do, I'm sure now, is that children will dunk their biscuit in an Emma Bridgewater mug of tea.
Is that the trick?
I'm afraid I've missed a trick, is that I haven't been drinking coffee from a mug of yours, but we have hundreds. We have hundreds in the office, so I'll have to, I don't know, put this one away.
We'll sort it out. Maybe
That's a tactful fib after the event. It's plain that you've invested in Cornish ware.
How about an Oppidan times Emma Bridgewater Christmas collection? It could
Well,
be.
it's a possibility. Can you make the minimums though? Because we
that's a
2,000 units.
2,000 units. Well, we'll see how many people watch this, and then we can always ask whether they're.
We'll get there. We'll come back to you. Emma, we are hugely, hugely grateful for you joining us today. Thank you. Inspirational work, beautifully put, and great fun too. We wish you well for the autumn, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.